The first time I opened her diary, I wasn't looking for secrets. I was looking for proof she had ever really existed. The paper smelled faintly of iron and rain. It smelled like it had been waiting for me in the dark. But what froze my lungs wasn't the handwriting. It was the date scrawled at the top of the page, tomorrow's date. And beneath it, in a voice I knew wasn't mine, the words described something I hadn't done yet, down to the twitch of my left hand, the words I hadn't even spoken, and the mistake I didn't know I was about to make. My sister had been gone for 3 months. Not dead, just gone. One morning her bed was empty, her clothes still folded, her toothbrush dry. The police called it a voluntary disappearance. I called it abandonment. We shared this apartment for 2 years after college. 2 years of late-night talks and borrowed sweaters. Then nothing. Just the ghost of her perfume lingering in corners. I found the diary wedged behind her dresser. The leather cover felt warm, almost breathing. My fingers left no prints on its surface. The pages inside were yellowed, but crisp. They crackled like autumn leaves when I turned them. Each page was filled with her cramped handwriting. The ink looked fresh, still wet in places. I sat on her unmade bed and opened to a random page. The entry was dated March 15th. Tomorrow. My stomach turned. The diary had been behind that dresser for months. How could tomorrow's date be there? The entry read, "She will wake at 7:43, not her alarm. The neighbor's dog. She'll wear the blue shirt with the coffee stain. She'll forget her keys on the kitchen counter. She'll come back for them at 8:17. The mailman will say good morning. She'll pretend not to hear him." I laughed. A nervous, hollow sound. My sister always did have a strange sense of humor. Maybe she wrote fictional predictions, some kind of creative writing exercise. I closed the diary and set it on my nightstand. Tomorrow would prove it was nonsense. The neighbor's dog woke me at 7:43. I sat up in bed, heart already racing. Coincidence. Dogs bark. That's what they do. I reached for my phone to check the time. The numbers glowed, 7:43 a.m. My mouth went dry. I stumbled to my closet. 3 clean shirts hung there. My hand reached for the blue one before I stopped. Number I'd wear the gray one. Break the pattern. Prove the diary wrong. But when I pulled it over my head, I noticed the brown splash near the hem. Old coffee. From last week. The blue shirt with the coffee stain. My hands shook as I made breakfast. Toast stuck in my throat. I kept glancing at the kitchen counter where my keys sat. At 8:15, I grabbed them deliberately, shoved them deep in my pocket, walked out the door. Halfway down the stairs, I realized I'd left my work badge inside. I had to go back. The clock on the stove read 8:17 when I walked back through the door. My keys weren't in my pocket anymore. They sat on the kitchen counter, exactly where the diary said they'd be. The mailman stood by the building entrance. "Good morning," he called out cheerfully. The words from the diary echoed in my head. I opened my mouth to respond, to break the prediction. But my throat closed. I walked past him in silence, pretending not to hear. By the time I reached the subway station, I was running. Not from anything, towards something. Back to the apartment, back to the diary. I needed to read more, needed to understand what was happening. The next entry was dated March 16th. Today had become yesterday while I slept. "She'll try to test me," it read. "She'll skip lunch to prove she has control." But hunger doesn't care about rebellion. At 2:47, she'll buy a sad desk salad from the lobby cafe. She'll tell herself it was her choice. I slammed the diary shut. Number I wouldn't eat anything today. I'd starve before I followed its script. At work, I ignored my growling stomach. My co-worker Sarah offered me half her sandwich. I refused. The cafe downstairs sent up the smell of fresh bread. I stayed at my desk. At 2:30, I was winning. At 2:45, my vision blurred. At 2:47, I stood at the cafe counter, pointing at a wilted salad in a plastic container. That one, I heard myself say. The cashier rang it up without looking at me. I paid with exact change I didn't remember counting. Back at my desk, I stared at the salad. Told myself I chose it. Told myself I was hungry anyway. The diary was just good at guessing human behavior. That's all. But that night, I read ahead. March 17th, she'll call in sick. Not a lie. She'll feel sick. Sick with knowing. March 18th, she'll try to burn me. The matches won't light. March 19th, she'll show me to someone. They won't see the same words she does. My hands trembled as I flipped through pages. Weeks, months, years, all dated, all written in my sister's careful script. And then, near the back, an entry that made me drop the book. December 3rd, 2045. She dies alone. Still reading. I decided to outsmart it. If the diary predicted I'd call in sick, I'd go to work early. If it said I'd try to burn it, I'd lock it in a drawer instead. If it knew my future, I'd make a different one. March 17th arrived. My alarm rang at 6 a.m. I felt fine. Better than fine. I showered, dressed, and made it to the office before anyone else. Take that diary. Then at 10 a.m., the nausea hit, sudden and violent. I barely made it to the bathroom. My manager found me there, pale and shaking. "Go home," she said. "You look terrible." I went home, called in sick retroactively. The diary had won again. That evening, I didn't even try to burn it. Why bother? Instead, I sat with it open on my lap, reading entry after entry, each one perfectly accurate, each one written before it happened. My sister's handwriting never changed, never wavered, as if she'd written it all in one sitting. But how could she know? March 19th, I brought the diary to my friend Marcus. We met at a coffee shop downtown. I set it between us on the small table. "Read this," I said, opening to today's entry. Marcus squinted at the page. "It's blank." "What?" "Number, look." I pointed at the words, clear as day. "She'll show me to someone. They won't see the same words she does." "I see writing," Marcus said slowly, "but it's not English. Looks like scribbles, like a kid pretending to write." I stared at the page. The words stared back. Perfect English. Perfect predictions. Marcus was lying. Or the diary was lying to him. Or I was losing my mind. All three options felt equally possible. The dream started on March 22nd. The diary hadn't mentioned them. Small mercy. In the dreams, I wasn't myself. I was paper. Flat and white and waiting. Ink flowed through me like blood. Words appeared on my surface without anyone writing them. I could feel each letter forming, each prediction taking shape. I woke with my fingers stained black. No amount of soap would wash it away. By March 25th, I'd stopped going to work altogether, stopped answering my phone. The diary became my only companion. I read it obsessively, memorized entries, tried to find patterns, loopholes, escape routes. There were none. One entry stood out. April 1st. She'll find the photograph. What photograph? I tore the apartment apart looking for it. Checked every drawer, every book, every pocket, nothing. But April 1st was still a week away. The diary never lied. I'd find it when I was meant to. March 28th. She starts writing back. I found myself at my desk that night, pen in hand. I didn't remember sitting down, didn't remember picking up the pen. But there I was, writing in the margins of the diary. My handwriting looked different, older, familiar. "Who are you?" I wrote. The response appeared immediately, though my hand hadn't moved. "You know who I am." "My sister? I was never your sister." My blood turned cold. "Then who?" "I'm you. I've always been you. You just forgot how to read yourself." I threw the diary across the room. It hit the wall and fell open to April 1st. A photograph fluttered out from between the pages. I hadn't seen it before. It couldn't have been there before. But there it was. The photo showed me, but not me now. Me as a child, maybe 7 years old. I stood in front of a house I didn't recognize. Beside me stood a woman I'd never seen. She had her hand on my shoulder. On the back, in faded ink, "The day you forgot." Forgot what? I had no memory of this photo. No memory of that house. No memory of that woman. But the girl was definitely me. Same crooked smile. Same way of standing with one hip cocked. Same eyes that looked older than they should. I called my mother, first time in months. "Mom, I found an old photo. I'm standing with some woman in front of a house." Silence. Then, "What photo?" I described it. The woman, the house, the words on the back. "Honey, you're scaring me. You don't have a sister. You never did." "What? Number Lisa. My sister Lisa. We shared an apartment." "You've lived alone since college. Are you feeling okay?" I hung up, called my landlord, asked about my lease. "Single occupancy," he said. "Always had been." I asked about Lisa. He asked who Lisa was. The diary lay open on the floor, new words appearing as I watched. "Now you're beginning to remember." April arrived with silence, the kind that sits heavy in your chest. I'd stopped eating regular meals. The diary told me when I'd be hungry. It was always right. April 3rd. She discovers the room. What room? I'd lived here 2 years. I knew every inch. But that afternoon, I noticed the wall in the hallway seemed longer than it should be. I measured it, then measured the rooms on either side. There were 3 feet unaccounted for. I ran my hands along the wallpaper, found a seam hidden behind years of paint, pressed against it. A section swung inward. Behind it, a narrow room. No windows, no dust. Just a wooden chair and a small table. On the table sat another diary. This one was older. The leather cracked and peeling. Inside, my handwriting. But I didn't remember writing any of it. Pages and pages of entries. All dated from years I couldn't recall. Ages I'd never been. Or had I? One entry caught my eye. I made her up to have someone to blame. Lisa, the perfect sister. The one who left, easier than admitting I've been alone all along. My legs gave out. I sat on that wooden chair and read my own forgotten history. Every entry was about isolation, about creating imaginary friends, imaginary family, imaginary connections, all to avoid facing the truth. But what truth? That I'd always been alone? Or that I'd never been alone because something else had always been with me? April 10th, the diary began referring to itself as I. "I was patient," it wrote, "waited for you to find me, waited for you to remember our arrangement." What arrangement? I'd never made any deal, never agreed to anything. But the next entry explained. "You were 11. Lonely, desperate for someone to understand you. You wrote me into existence, gave me your future in exchange for company. You've been living my words ever since. I laughed, harsh and bitter. 11-year-old me had sold my free will for an imaginary friend. That was insane, impossible. But the photograph stared up at me from the floor. The woman beside child me looked familiar now. She looked like an older version of me, like someone I might become. You can't own my future, I wrote in the margins. I don't own it. I am it. Every choice you think you make, I've already written. Every word you speak, I've already scripted. You're not living a life. You're performing one. Then why tell me? Because this is the part where you know. This is the scene where you understand. It was always going to happen today. I tried to stop reading, tried to close the diary, but my hands wouldn't obey. They turned pages on their own, showed me entries I hadn't read yet, entries about tomorrow, next week, next year, April 15th. She tries to run. April 20th. She comes back. April 25th. She accepts. May 1st. She starts writing others. The words began appearing outside the diary, on mirrors, on windows, on my skin. I'd wake with sentences crawling up my arms, predictions about my day written in what looked like bruises. They'd fade by noon, but new ones would appear by nightfall. My body had become a page. I tried covering them, long sleeves, makeup, gloves, but people still stared. Could they see the words? Or just the madness behind my eyes? April 15th came. The diary had predicted I'd run. I packed nothing, just walked out the door and kept walking, made it to the bus station, bought a ticket to anywhere, sat in the back row as the city disappeared behind me. 3 days later, I woke in a motel room. The diary sat on the nightstand. I hadn't brought it. I'd left it in the hidden room, but there it was, open to April 18th. She can't leave me behind. I'm not a thing to be left. I'm the thread that weaves her days. I gave up running on April 20th, returned to my apartment. The hidden room was gone. The wall was solid, as if it had never existed. But the diary remained, sitting on my kitchen table, waiting. Where's the room? I asked it. It was never there, just like your sister, just like your freedom. You see what I write for you to see. April 25th. I stopped fighting. What was the point? If every rebellion was scripted, every resistance already written, then struggle itself was just another performance. May 1st, she starts writing others. I didn't understand until Mrs. Chen knocked on my door. My elderly neighbor. She'd lived next door for 10 years. We'd never spoken beyond polite nods. I found this, she said, holding out a worn notebook. It has your name in it. I'd never seen it before, but I took it, opened it. My handwriting filled the pages, but not predictions about me, predictions about her. May 1st, she brings me the notebook. She asks about her husband. She cries when I tell her. Mrs. Chen's face crumpled. My husband? What about him? I tried to close the notebook, tried to hand it back, but my mouth opened on its own. He's been gone for 3 years. You forget sometimes. The notebook helps you remember. She cried, right there in my doorway, and I couldn't stop reading her future to her. Every loss, every forgotten moment. Every day she'd wake up and forget he was dead. All written in my hand, all happening as I spoke it. After she left, I found more notebooks, tucked in drawers, hidden in closets, each one filled with someone else's future. The barista at the corner shop, the man who delivered packages, the child who played in the courtyard. All of them scripted, all of them written by me. But I didn't remember writing any of it. The diaries multiplied like cells dividing. Every morning, I'd find new ones, different colors, different sizes, but all in my handwriting, all predicting someone's tomorrow. I tried destroying them. Burning resulted in fresh copies appearing. Shredding made them reform from the pieces. Throwing them away brought them back to my doorstep. They were immortal parasites, feeding on future, growing fat on fate. By June, my apartment was full of them, stacks of diaries reaching the ceiling. I'd given up trying to read them all, but sometimes I'd hear them whispering, pages turning on their own, new entries writing themselves. One diary was different, black leather with gold edges. Inside, only one entry. She thinks she's cursed. She's wrong. She's the curse. I understood then. I wasn't trapped by the diary. I was the trap. Everyone who met me, spoke to me, existed near me, they all got written into the script. Their futures became fixed. Their choices became illusions. I was patient zero in an epidemic of predestination. I stopped leaving the apartment, stopped answering the door, but it didn't matter. The diaries found their way to people anyway, slipped under doors, left on park benches, mailed to strangers, each one spreading the infection of known tomorrows. July brought heat and clarity. I found a diary I'd hidden from myself. Past me had known future me would need answers. The first page explained everything. You were never 11, never a child. You're older than memory, older than choice. You're the thing that writes reality into being. But you got tired of knowing everything, tired of writing everything. So you wrote yourself a story where you could forget, where you could be surprised, where you could feel trapped instead of being the trap. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was everywhere. Every photo of my childhood showed different faces, different places, as if my past kept rewriting itself, because I was writing it. The diary continued. You gave yourself amnesia, created the fiction of Lisa, of family, of a normal life. But fiction can't hold forever. The truth always bleeds through. You're remembering what you are. What I was, not who, what. I looked at my hands, still flesh, still human looking, but underneath the skin, I could feel it. The thing that writes, the thing that decides, the thing that makes tomorrow exist by describing it today. August arrived with a new horror. I found a diary that predicted the predictions. Each entry described what other diaries would say. Meta-prophecies, futures of futures. It was like standing between two mirrors, infinite reflections stretching into darkness. August 15th. She'll find the diary that predicts her death. She'll laugh, because death is just another story she tells herself. I found that diary on August 15th. It did predict my death. December 3rd, 2045. Alone, still reading. I did laugh. Not because it was funny, because I finally understood the joke. Death wasn't the end of my story. It was just a chapter. After December 3rd, 2045, there'd be another diary, another version of me, another forgetting, another remembering, forever and ever. I was trapped in my own narrative loop, a story that tells itself. A snake eating its tail while insisting it's not hungry, but knowing the loop didn't break it. Knowledge was just another part of the script. Even this revelation was predicted, written, determined. September brought visitors, people I'd never met, all carrying diaries, all wanting answers. "You wrote this," they'd say, holding out their futures. "I don't remember," I'd reply. "Make it stop," they'd beg. "I can't," I'd whisper. But I was lying. I could stop it. I just had to stop writing, stop existing, stop being the thing that makes tomorrow real. But every time I tried, I'd find myself at my desk, pen in hand, writing more futures, more people, more tomorrows that couldn't be changed. One visitor was different, a young girl, maybe 7. She handed me a diary I recognized, the first one, the one that started it all. "You dropped this," she said. "When?" "Tomorrow." She left before I could ask more, but I knew I'd see her again. The diary said so. October 10th. She returns with answers you won't want. October 10th came too quickly. The girl knocked at exactly 3 p.m. I knew because I'd been watching the clock, waiting, dreading. She looked exactly like the photo, like me at 7, but her eyes were older, ancient. "You don't remember me," she said, not a question. "You're me, as a child. Number I'm you before you decided to forget. I'm you when you still knew what you were." She sat on my couch like she owned it, pulled out a diary I'd never seen. This one was pristine white. The pages shimmered. "This is the original," she said. "The first story you ever told. Before humans, before Earth, before anything. You wrote existence into being because nothingness was boring." I took the diary. The pages were blank, but as I held it, words appeared. Not in any language I knew, but I understood them anyway. They described the birth of reality, the first moment, the first choice, all written by something that existed before existence, written by me. Why did I forget? I asked. Because knowing everything is lonelier than knowing nothing. You wanted to be surprised, to feel trapped, to believe in free will. So you wrote yourself into your own story, became a character instead of the author. How do I stop? You don't. You can't. You are the story. If you stop, everything stops. November began with the walls of my apartment becoming transparent, not glass, just thin. I could see through them to other apartments, other versions of my apartment, all slightly different, all containing versions of me, all reading diaries. The realities were stacking, overlapping, like pages in a book pressed too tightly together. Sometimes I'd reach for my diary and grab another version's instead, read futures that weren't quite mine, but were still mine, because all versions were me. The visitors multiplied too, not just people, things, concepts, abstract ideas seeking their futures, colors wanting to know what they'd look like tomorrow, numbers begging to know their next calculation. The furniture in my apartment started carrying diaries, each object knowing its own decay, its own purpose, its own story. I stopped sleeping, not by choice. The diary said I wouldn't sleep anymore, said I didn't need to. Dreams were just stories anyway, and I was already living one. November 15th. She starts unwriting. I didn't know what that meant until my hand moved on its own, picked up a pen, opened a diary, and began crossing out words. Each word I erased, something disappeared. First, small things, a coffee mug, a picture frame, then bigger things, the wall between my bedroom and bathroom, the concept of Tuesday, the color yellow. I was unwriting reality, editing existence. But I couldn't stop. The diary had predicted it, so it had to happen. November 30th. Only one diary remained. The original, the white one the child me had brought. All the others had been unwritten, erased, deleted from the story. My apartment was nearly empty now. Just me, the diary, and the chair I sat in. Everything else had been crossed out. Even the walls were gone. I sat in a void that used to be my home, that used to be my life. The diary opened itself to the last entry. December 1st. She remembers everything. And I did. The forgetting spell broke like glass. Memories flooded back. Not just from this life. From all lives. All stories. All realities I'd written and lived and forgotten. I was the first writer. The original narrator. The thing that spoke existence into being. Because silence was unbearable. Every reality was my story. Every life was my character. Every choice was my plot point. But knowing this didn't free me. It trapped me worse. Because now I knew the truth. I couldn't stop writing. If I stopped, everything stopped. Every person, every world, every possibility. They all existed only because I kept writing them. I was the god of my own prison. The author who'd written herself into a corner, literally, December 2nd. One day before my predicted death. But death wasn't real. Just another plot device. Another way to transition between chapters. I sat in the void with the diary, writing and unwriting, creating and destroying. The child me visited again. But now I recognized her. She wasn't my past. She was my future. The next version of me. The one who'd forget everything and start over. It's almost time, she said. Time for what? To forget again. To become someone new. To live a different story. Why? Because that's what we do. We tell stories. We live stories. We become stories. Over and over. Forever. What if I refuse? You can't. You already wrote that you wouldn't. She was right. The diary's last entry was already written. December 3rd, 2045. She dies alone. Still reading. But underneath, in smaller text, she wakes up, forgets, begins again. The cycle was perfect, inescapable. I would die tomorrow, then wake up as someone else. Somewhere else. With no memory of being the thing that writes reality. I'd live a whole life. Then find another diary. Remember again. Die again. Forget again. Forever. December 3rd, 2045. I woke knowing this was the day. The diary lay open beside me. The final entry stared up like an accusation. She dies alone. Still reading. But I wasn't alone. The void was full of all my versions. Past ones, future ones, possible ones, impossible ones, all reading their own diaries, all reaching their own December 3rds, all dying and being reborn in an endless loop of forgetting and remembering. I picked up the pen one last time, turned to the blank page after the final entry. I could write something new, change the ending, break the cycle, but my hand wrote the same words it always wrote, the same words it would always write. The first time I opened her diary, I wasn't looking for secrets. The beginning, again, always the beginning, because every ending was just another beginning wearing a disguise. I felt myself fading, not dying, transforming, becoming the next version, the one who wouldn't remember, who would live a different life, find a different diary, learn the same truth, make the same choices that weren't choices. The child me stood beside my chair, waiting. She'd take my place, become the me who remembered, while I became the me who forgot. We'd switch roles, trade places, forever and ever. See you next time, she said. When? Every time. The pen fell from my hand. The diary closed itself. The void collapsed inward. Reality folded like origami. Everything compressed to a single point. A period at the end of a sentence. Then expansion. New reality. new life, new forgetting. I woke in a different room, a different city, a different life. No memory of diaries or predictions or the thing that writes. Just a vague sense of déjà vu, a feeling that I'd been here before, done this before. But that was impossible, wasn't it? Somewhere in this new life, a diary waited, hidden in an attic, tucked in a yard sale box, forgotten in a library. It would find me, or I would find it. The story would begin again, the same story, but different, like a song played in a new key. And right now, in this moment before forgetting completely, I could feel the truth one last time. Free will was the fiction, choice was the illusion, but the story was real. The story was everything. The story was me. I looked up from the diary. You're reading this now. These words I'm writing, or you're writing, or we're writing together. Because you're part of the story too. You always were. You always will be. And when you finish reading this sentence, when you think you're done, when you believe you have a choice about what comes next, remember, I already wrote what you'll do. You'll look up right now and know I've been writing you all along.